Once you've finished designing your interactive report, now we can focus on making it interactive. One thing I want to emphasize is do not add interactivity until you've finished out the design, simply because you don't want to waste time going back and undoing everything that you've already done before. Let's take this one page at a time and explain how to create news buttons. So here we are on our first page. There's a button on here for Start Here that we want to jump to the next page. To create a button, I'm going to select the text box and the little frame that's behind it. So this little orangey red beveled rectangle and my text are both selected. I do need to group those, so go to Object and Group and treat those as one individual object. With that group selected, locate the Buttons and Forms panel. Now if you don't see the Buttons and Forms panel off to the side, you can go up to Window, go down to Interactive, oops, there it is, and choose Buttons and Forms from here. With this selected, the type of button that we want to create is a simple button. Now when you do this, it's going to ask you to give it a name and pay attention to the event, and then finally add an action to this. We're going to keep this simple. You really don't need to give your button any specific name, so we're going to keep it as the default button and whatever number comes up. But we want the event to happen whenever we click on it and release. So there are different kinds of triggers that could happen, like if I instantly clicked or even rolled over it with my mouse. But since we're thinking about this as being read on an iPad, we're going to do a release or a tap. Finally, the action. We want it to do something whenever we click on it. In our case, we want it to go to another page or a specific page. In this case, you can tell it to go to the first, last page, the very next page, or a specific page that you may have in mind. Hey, since our next page is going to be page 2, and page 2 has all the buttons on it, we're going to tell it to go to the next page. With this done, let's look at some of the other options that are here. We won't necessarily need to do anything else with the appearances or the zoom or inheritance. We're going to keep all of those the same. If you want to test this out, at the very bottom, you can preview what this will look like by clicking down here. This will open up an EPUB interactive preview, and by default it may take a little bit of time for it to render. You can also make this screen a little bit larger, and as you hover over it, you can click on it. You can see that it looks like a button, but now it's not necessarily doing anything. Here's the thing to keep in mind. Whenever you open up your preview, make sure you don't have single preview mode selected. You want to have the entire document selected. So with this option selected, now when I click on it, excuse me, I'm going to hit stop. Let's clear the preview. Let's try it again. Press play. We'll let it build through. This time it's taking a little bit longer simply because the entire document was created. Now that I had that selected and I redid it, when I click on my button, it'll take me to my next page. So it's a great way of previewing everything that we have. With this button done, let's go back to our next page. Now in this case, we want to be able to make buttons out of all the different things that are here. So like we did before, I'm going to select the text box and the little shape behind it. Let's make a group out of it. Go over to your Buttons and Forms. Let's make a button. And in this case, when we click on it, we want to jump to a specific page. The Age of Campus Fires and Fatalities. This particular page, for me, is on page right here. So this is page number 4, I believe. Let's make sure I tell you correctly. Excuse me, this is page 5 that I'm on. So when I click this button, I want it to jump to page 5. In my Buttons and Forms, we'll keep the name of it the same, on release the same, but in this case, we'll tell it to go to a specific page. From here, I can tell it what page to go to. I want it to go to page 5. Again, once I'm done, If I want to test it out, at the very bottom I can click on Preview the Spread. We'll give it a second. But remember, by default, it's only going to preview that one page. We want to open up all of the document by clicking here. If I was to test it, still not going to work, so I'm going to choose Stop or Clear Preview, and then it's Play Preview again. Now with the entire document selected, I should be able to click on that first one, and it will jump to the 5th page. So we got Start here. I can Start me from the top. I can now click on Age of Campus, and it will jump here to this particular setting too. You're going to repeat this process for all of the different buttons that you have. Now again, I don't have all of my pages set up, but let's go through and do some for the ones that I do have. In my case, here's my University Housing Report. I can select both of those. Again, group it. This report is on page 3, so I want to jump to page 3 when I click on this button. Open up your forms and buttons. Choose the type as being a button, and the action will tell it to go to a specific page, and this page is going to go to page number 3. You don't have to preview it every time. As a matter of fact, I would actually wait till the very end if you've got a bunch of buttons that you want to preview on. This last button, obviously I want to go to my first page or return to my page number 1. So in this case, on the event, we'll make it a button. Oops, do make sure it's grouped together. Now that they're grouped, I can make a button out of both of them. And we'll go to page 1 for this one. There is no set order that these buttons have to go in, so I'll leave it up to you how you want it to work. Just make sure that all of your buttons do go to the appropriate page and you've got a good preview for it. At any time, if you want to open up your preview without having to go through your buttons form, you can also go up to Window, down to Interactive, and from here you can open up the EPUB Interactivity Preview. This will give you the entire document set up. Make sure it's set for there, and we'll hit play. Excuse me, let's give it some time to export. And now I should be able to click through. So I can return home. This will take me up here. I can go back. I can jump to the very bottom. Once you've got all of the buttons on this page done, it would be a simple matter of going through each of these pages and setting up the buttons for the back, return home, and the next pages. As we've done with the others, all you have to do is select the button that you've got done here. So this will be for the back. We'll group these together first, object and group. The type will be a button. And in this case, the event will simply be go to the previous page, not the last page, but the previous page. So this will be the page before. With that done, we can do a return home button. So let's select both of these. We'll group them together. This will be a button that'll go to page 1 or go to the first page. And this next button will group all of these together and make a button that goes to the next page. Now, here's a great tip to know. Once you've got all 3 of these buttons designed, all you have to do is to copy those buttons, and you can go to the other pages and you can replace them with these down here. So I can get rid of these buttons, edit, paste in place, and these buttons will give you the same functionality. They'll go back to the previous pages, next, or return home. So don't think you have to do this for every single page, at least for the ones on the bottom. This will allow you to have the same button functionality on all of your pages that you have. So that's a great time saver whenever you set those up. Now, the last thing that we want to do is to add a simple animation to some of our design to make it a little bit more interesting to look at. These don't have to be overly complex. As a matter of fact, we're going to keep them nice and simple for what we're doing. I want you to only animate the charts and graphs as they come in. So I'm going to scroll down to this first little graph and select it. With it selected, locate the Animation tab. Once it's selected, you can choose from a variety of different kinds of preset animations that Adobe InDesign can do. So under Preset, under Choose, this will give you a little preview or an idea of what it does. In this case, if I wanted it to fade in, with that chosen, it'll give you a little preview up here. And you can play around with the duration or how many times you want it to do. So if you want it to fade in a little bit longer over the course of 1.5 seconds. In my case, I don't want it to play multiple times, so I'm going to keep it at one time, and we don't have to loop it. But with this done, if I needed to preview it, this will show you what that fade in effect will look like. So the page loads, you can see it comes up nicely. Let's do the same for another page. So for this one, I can select it. Again, under the animation panel is where you can choose different kinds of animations. Fade in is one. You can have it fly in from a specific direction. Let's preview that. In this case, you see it fades in and fades up along there. So these simple little animations are what I'm going to be looking for, at least for your data sets. You don't have to add any animation to any other part of your design. I want it to be nice and readable for each of your pages. When you are finished, the last thing we need to do is to export this as an interactive EPUB document. The first thing I'm going to do is to go to File, and I'm going to save my Illustrator document so that everything is nice and safe. Next, go up to File, and we want to export this as an EPUB document. So choose Export. You can give it a name. In this case, I'll keep it as Fire Report. I'm going to save it to the desktop. The format is very important. We want to choose EPUB Fixed Layout. With Fixed Layout selected, this will allow you to keep everything exactly the same size and placement as you have on your document. We'll do Save, and make sure you're exporting all of the pages, and everything else can remain exactly the same as far as the conversion and any other type of data that you have. When we say OK, this may take a few moments to save up, but once it's done, it'll give you a nice little EPUB document. Now, these kinds of documents can only be opened if you have a digital reader. And most devices now come with some sort of digital reader. In my case, since I'm on a Macintosh, it's called iBooks. It may ask you to sign in, otherwise it'll come straight up from here. I will say OK for this. The EPUB is interactive, so I can say Start Here. It'll take me to my next page, and I can click on the other pages, like for instance the Age of Campus Fires. It'll take me here. It animates up. If I want to return home or go back, I can click on the back button and it'll take me to my different page for this. Or I can return home and it takes me to my starting page. So this interactive EPUB is what you need to upload to Moodle for your class project. In addition to this, there's also a place or a link on the Moodle page for you to upload your individual data sheets and graphs that you created that are included inside of this document. The final thing I'll note is if this document is too large, for instance, this is pushing only 4 megabytes, but if it's too large to upload through Moodle, feel free to email it to me or send me a link through your Google Drive.